Chapter 19. We're going to continue our discussion with animals and focus on one group of chordates, an important group to us because we're part of them, the vertebrates. In our discussion, we're going to look at how the group evolved and diversified. Then we'll change gears and focus on one group of vertebrates, the primates, which we belong to. And then we're going to look at one specific lineage, the hominids, the lineage that led to us, humans. So we're going to see how man came about. All right. Now, biologists have looked at several lines of evidence to figure out how chordates, specifically vertebrates, have evolved, looking at molecular and fossil evidence. So the current best idea is here. We have several lines. The chordates consist of the tunicates, the lancets, and the vertebrates. All right, we've already talked about the lancets and tunicates. These are two separate groups of chordates. Somewhere along the evolutionary time scale came chordates with a head. We call them the craniates. And this led to the hagfish. Hagfishes, although we discuss them with vertebrates, are not true vertebrates. They have a head end, but they don't have a vertebral column, but they're sort of very closely related to vertebrates in many other ways. The line that shows rudimentary vertebrae, but also retains a notochord as adults, is the lampreys, which are essentially fish parasites. Now, the next important evolutionary feature was jaws with teeth. We see these in the sharks, the cartilaginous fishes, the bony fish. And then a little bit later down the evolutionary ladder are lungs, or structures that act like lungs that enable air breathing. In one group of the ray fin fishes, and in another group with lobe fins, which led to limbs, the lobe fins. The coelacanth, an ancient vertebrate, previously only known from the fossil record, but now have been found living. And then true limbs, amphibians, and then the development of the amniotic egg and other features led to successful colonization of land by reptiles and mammals. All right, our first branch of the chordates would be the tunicates, lancelets, then the head end with a pack full of sensory structures, the craniates, cranium, skull, in other words. And then vertebrates with a very well developed skull and a backbone, also called a vertebral column with vertebrae, which represents segmentation, but on an internal sense. And then the jaws, biting. Then lungs, or lung structures like lungs. Muscular lobe fins, which led to limbs. The earliest amphibians is the first group of tetrapods to colonize land, which later led to the amniotic egg and other features which led to reptiles and then to mammals. All right, hagfish and lampreys, all right, have a head. So they're classified as craniates. They have a notochord as adults, but no jaws or paired fins. Jaws came next in the evolutionary time scale, then lungs, lung derivatives, lobe fins, which enable walking on, can actually locomote with them. That led to limbs. Then the amniotic egg, terrestrial adapted egg. All right, so we don't classify hagfishes as vertebrates, although we discuss them with the vertebrates. Lampreys are true vertebrates. But hagfishes have abilities to slime you It keeps the predators away. All right, I mentioned earlier that lampreys the adults are parasites. They have a raspy tongue. They can stick to the fish and suck out its juices. Yuck. The larvae are filter feeders. They live in streams. Kind of behave like lancets. All right. Jawed vertebrates appear about 470 million years ago. And then, so the first jawed vertebrates were fish. They quickly spread out, paired fins and tail. Now, the best guess jaws are modifications of skeletal supports of the anterior gill slits. And the remaining gill slits developed into gills. Something like this. They're jawless, but the first pair of skeletal supports of the pharyngeal slits led to jaws. This is best guess. All right, we have 3 lines of jawed vertebrates with gills and paired fins. We call these fish. The chondrichthyines have a cartilaginous skeleton. The ray skin fish, these are bony fish. And the lobe fins, the coelacanths, the lungfishes, and led to the amphibians. Amphibians came from lobe fin fishes. Chondrichthyines, cartilage, endoskeleton, they can sense electric charges, and a lateral line system, which increases their sense of smell. They are very fast-smelling predators. They can see well enough. Sharks, rays, and stingrays and manta rays. This is one chondrichthyine, and here's a manta ray, which is also a cousin of the shark. That's a big shark, probably a great white. I hate to be that seal. Majestic. Rays are majestic. Seahorses. Interesting group. And yes, they don't get picked off that easily. All right, ray fin fishes. These are trout, the bass. They have an internal skeleton made of bone. They have flat scales covered with mucus and an operculum that covers their gills. Sharks don't have an operculum, and sharks do not have a swim bladder either. So sharks have naked gills. But with that swim bladder, and what they can do is they can open and close and draw water through their mouth and out, so they can hover and breathe, filter past water through the gills. See, sharks can't do that. Sharks aren't incapable of that. They have to keep moving through the water. In other words, to keep breathing. Or if they settle down to position themselves where there's a bottom current coming through and they can, move the water through them that way. This is the most diverse group, the ray fin. There's more species of ray fins than there are of any other vertebrates. So, operculum covers the gills. They do have a swim bladder. Fills with air, enables them to hover like a helicopter in the water. And they can have muscles attached. They can, draw the operculum back and forth, draw water through the mouth, out through the gills. They have paired fins, dorsal fin on top, pelvic. They have pectoral fins, anal fin. They have another fin up there, and the tail. A balloon fish, nobody's going to eat him. A flounder, flatfish, a seahorse. Look at those spines. Those will hurt you. I guess they don't get preyed on. Seahorse, very good at camouflage. And the flounder is also camouflage. They blend in with the sediment on the ground. The lobe fins have very muscular pelvic and pectoral fins. They can actually walk on those fins. The coelacanths, I mentioned how they were only known from the fossil record until about 1949 when they brought up a living one. Lungfishes live in the southern hemisphere. They can gulp air. They can move from pool to pool. And the tetrapods, which led to the amphibians, led to us. There's a coelacanth. All right, during the late Devonian period, this is, about 300 something, late 400 million years ago, amphibians came from a line of lobe fin. This is one of the highlights of animal evolution. And from these amphibians, from this line that led to amphibians, mammals, reptiles, birds are now classified as a type of reptile. All right. Like plants, vertebrates had to overcome some obstacles. Gas exchange, water conservation, support the body, and reproduction. So, how do you move about? And how do you adapt your sensory organs that once worked well in water but not on land? Well, the fossil record shows us the first tetrapod was a four-limbed fish that could actually breathe air. We're finding that and this is what led to amphibians. So this shows you how an early lungfish led to amphibians. Amphibians, frogs, salamanders, and caecilians. Caecilians are different. They have moist skin. They use that skin to supplement their lungs for breathing. Some of them are toxic to us. They lay their eggs in water, and their eggs are like fish eggs. If they don't stay wet, they dry out. They undergo metamorphosis. The larval form, which is a gills to an adult form with primitive lungs. And yes, they were the first tetrapods to colonize land. Here's a fire salamander. A caecilian, it's like a worm or a snake, but it's not a snake nor a worm. A poison dart frog. Frog eggs. And here we have a tadpole undergoing metamorphosis. And the tadpoles you can see inside the eggs. So essentially the eggs are just like little, oh hold on, where am I going with this? Might help. Little balls of jelly. Yeah. Alright. Reptiles were the first amniotes. The amniotic egg, which has 4 internal membranes. It's a life support system. And the human placenta is an offshoot of the amniotic egg. There's 4 internal membranes. The amnion is a sac. It surrounds the embryo. We retain that. Mammals retain that amnion. The yolk sac, which contains the nutrients, the chorion, and an allantois, which air exchange, oxygen, get rid of carbon dioxide, and waste disposal. Reptiles which are a pretty unique group of vertebrates: the lizards, the snakes, the turtles, crocodilians, birds, and the extinct dinosaurs. Skin covered with scales and waterproof with keratin. Our hair, mammalian hair, evolved from scales. They're actually quite similar in some ways. They use their lungs to obtain oxygen and ectothermic. They do maintain a constant body temperature, but they do this behaviorally. They absorb their heat from the surroundings. Like in the morning when it's cold, the lizards will go out, do push-ups in the sun. Then when it gets too hot, they head for shade. That way they maintain a body temperature actually close to yours, but they do it behaviorally rather than metabolically as we do. And there's a whole colony of them hanging out at the Galapagos. There he is. Time to head to McDonald's. Yeah, right. Is that something for me to eat? They're not vicious. They don't attack. They're rather gentle reptiles. Curious as all gets out, that's all. Some of the longest lived vertebrates. Turtles, they can go 100 plus years. Time for a stroll. They just take their time in getting there. They're in no hurry. Mama snake with her eggs. But in some snakes, the eggs hatch inside, so they give the appearance of giving live birth. All right, this is a cross section of an amniotic egg. There's the embryo surrounded by the amnion, amniotic sac, yolk sac, allantois collects waste products, and back up. The albumin, that's just a liquid inside the egg, like the yolk, not the yolk, but the white. All right, that's a bearded dragon. Some people keep those as pets. Birds. Birds are essentially used to be classified in their own group, aves, but now they're classified as reptiles. But they're different from most reptiles. They have wings, large flight muscles, no teeth, tail, bones that are for lightweight. Also, a couple other things. They're homeotherms. They maintain a constant, they generate their heat by metabolism just like us. They maintain a warm body temperature because of their high rate of metabolism. Large brains, senses, muscle control, excellent eyesight, and also four-chambered hearts. I'll talk about that later. Sexual selection. Birds Dinosaurs are closely related. The earliest, most primitive bird, Archaeopteryx, about the size of a crow, was found in a limestone quarry in Germany. And was a small bipedal dinosaur. Teeth, claws, long tail, but feathers. It had feathers. You can see the imprints in the fossils. We don't know how well it flew. May have just glided, or the feathers were simply a means to keep warm. We don't. Well, definitely that. Gotta get a run and take off there. There they go. Up and away. And an Archaeopteryx. This is extinct. They had claws, teeth, but feathers. And in addition to Archaeopteryx being found in Germany, feathered dinosaurs have been found in China. And it seems that maybe the feathers came about before flight did. Feathers could be an adaptation to keep maintaining a constant body temperature. Mammals. Mammals evolved from reptiles. But instead of scales, they have hair and mammary glands to produce milk to nourish the young. And efficient metabolism, respiratory systems, circulatory systems, and teeth that are differentiated for different functions, and teeth that are for different diets too. Egg laying, that's a characteristic that links mammals with reptiles. One group of mammals still lays eggs. That's the platypus, which was once thought to be a hoax, and the echidna, or spiny anteater. Yeah, so they lay eggs, these monotremes, but they still nourish their young with milk. And they have fur. Then we have another group, the marsupials, and a third group, the eutherians, the placentals. And yes, both marsupials have a type of placenta, but not as advanced as the eutherian. But the thing about marsupials, they're born earlier and in an embryonic form. Then they complete the development in a pouch, whereas with the true placentals, eutherians, they're held on and get until they've completed their embryonic development. So this is a monotreme with its babies. This is a platypus. All right. So the marsupials have a brief gestation, give birth to embryonic offspring that complete development in a pouch and attached to a nipple, such as the kangaroo, the koala. The eutherians are the placental mammals. They have very complex placentas compared to the marsupials. And they bear fully developed live young, such as the baby zebra. This is a newborn. There's what's left of the amniotic sac right there. The first true mammals were tiny little things that probably shivered in fear of the dinosaurs. All right. So monotremes are the oldest line, and then marsupials split apart from eutherians. There was a split there. Mammals underwent an extensive adaptive radiation after the Cretaceous extinction. When the dinosaurs went out, there was all of a sudden a whole wide range of niches, and the mammalian evolution just exploded into bats, whales, dolphins, porpoises, carnivores, herbivores, horses, things like that. There's a bat. This is a bat feeding on nectar. Here's a sea lion. The agave plant is the source of tequila. That's not an insect, that's not a bird, it's a bat. And yes, bats do pollinate. And carnivore, the wolf. Oh yeah, they're having a argument. Who's going to be top? Who's going to get to mate? Who's the top? Who's going to be the head of the pack? Who's the alpha? Who's going to be subordinate? Well, I guess he's going to be top wolf. Or the alpha. And dog. Primates. Alright, I promised you we'd talk about primates. Now, the earliest primates were just small tree-dwelling mammals. They were actually around before the dinosaurs. But they underwent their own adaptive radiation just within the primate line after the dinosaurs went bye-bye. Well, nowadays, most primates live in the trees, and primates have characteristics that adapt them to living in trees. Opposable thumbs, able to grasp. Humans still retain many of those traits, even though we don't tend to hang out in trees. But we are able to climb them because of those traits. Alright, the distinguishing features. Eyes in front, we can see ahead of us. Tiny nose. Wide range of motion, our shoulder joints, hip joints. 5 digits, flexible or opposable thumbs. And that's what sets us apart from other mammals. Whether it's a loris or a lemur. One group of primates are called the anthropoids. They have a fully opposable thumb. Includes the monkeys. They have their forelimbs about equal length to their hind limbs. Tails. Some have a tail. Some have prehensile tails. Works like a hand. Some don't. Then apes. Long arms, short legs, no tails. The red howler monkey, which is only the monkeys of South America have that prehensile tail. The monkeys of Africa do not have a prehensile. Lack a tail. Gorillas. Monkeys are Old World and New World. The New World have the prehensile tails. The Old World do not. Two separate groups. Since Africa has been separate from South America, they've been evolving along their own path. Of the Old World monkey, there are some that most of them live in the trees, but not the baboons. These are ground-dwelling monkeys. Nostrils point downward, and they lack the prehensile tail. The New World monkeys, the red howler monkey, for example, all live in the trees. They have their nostrils far apart, open aside. The apes include the gibbons, which are arboreal, orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and humans. Humans are naked apes. They have larger brains relative to body size. They have flexible, they can adapt their behavior. the orangutans, the gibbons, chimpanzees, and a human. Now, if you're using phylogenetics, we can see three groups of primates. Number one, the lemurs, the lorises, and podos, tiny little arboreal little things, the tarsiers, and then the anthropoids, which include monkeys and apes. And anthropoids began diverging from the others about 50 million years ago. Here's a phylogenetic tree showing the lines of descent. Alright, so old world monkeys and apes, which diverged, they started diverging into their separate groups: gibbons, orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and humans about 20 to 25 million years ago. Chimpanzees and gorillas, chimpanzees and humans separated about 5 million years ago. And that's very recent in evolutionary time frame. And humans and chimps are very closely related. I mean, they should be classified in the same genus. Not the same species per se, but genus. And then the human evolution. The line which led to us. There is a science called paleoanthropology which studies specifically human origins, looking at the period of time since humans and chimps split apart. This is within the last 5 million years. There's been about 20 different species of extinct hominins. Humans, essentially. And there's many different fossils. Now let's look at a timeline here. The earliest and then the many different species of Australopithecus, which is a separate line from humans, but did lead to the earliest humans, which led to us, Homo sapiens. What should you be noticing? Increase in the cranial vault, increase in brain size. These have about the same amount of brain as a chimpanzee, okay, but here we see a very much larger increase in brain size. Human-like, but went along a separate line than we did. Alright, the oldest human-like has lived about 7 to 6 million years ago. But diversity increased after 5. The first members of our own genus Homo about 1.8 million years ago. And by about 1 million years ago, Australopithecus died out. There's just Homos, genus Homo. But eventually all the Homo species except one went extinct. Now the Australopiths were bipedal. They walked upright, but they had small brains, more like chimpanzees. But we can consider them human. But humans, homos, chimpanzees are quadrupeds, humans are bipeds. And there's feet. Look at the position of the skull to the backbone. See, if you look at the backbone, it's positioned so the eyes face forward. It's straight out at an angle, but here it points down, the skull. The angle of the skull points down. So bipedalism came about before. Australopithecines were bipedal, but they had small brains, like a chimpanzee. But the earliest signs we actually have footprints date back about 3.6 million years ago, and fossil evidence that supports those footprints. But what leads to modern humans is the increase in brain size. Australopiths had brains more like the size of chimpanzees. We have much larger brains. Now, the earliest humans, Homo habilis, had small brains, but we see evidence of tools, tool making. And then the next group, Homo ergaster, had more sophisticated tools and larger brains, and could walk better, shall I say. Homo erectus was the first human to extend its range beyond Africa. And then Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals, actually coexisted with modern humans before they went extinct. Originally found in the Neander Valley in Germany and extended outwards. Now, by looking at mitochondrial DNA, which is passed from mother to children, is inherited from your mother, because in the eggs, because in fertilization, the only thing the sperm contributes is DNA. Mitochondria arise from the mother. And by looking at this mitochondrial DNA from Neanderthals and living humans, there's no relationship between Neanderthals and modern humans. So there had to be an ancestor between humans and Neanderthals about half a million years ago. But looking at nuclear genomes, not mitochondria, we see that there was some interbreeding between Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. So there had to be some interbreeding between the two. But modern humans, our ancestors, came from Africa. And the oldest known fossils were discovered in Ethiopia. So the oldest Homo sapiens, Ethiopia, 160, 195,000 years old. So, looking at DNA, Europeans and Asians share a more recent common ancestor. Many African lines are earlier branches of the human tree, and all living humans originated in Africa. Now, Homo sapiens emerged from Africa and started spreading out from about 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. Now, there's an oddball group of human skeletons found on the island that have been named Homo florensis, or hobbits. Now, is this a separate species? Well, one line of thought, a dwarf descendant of Homo erectus, a separate species, but not a separate species. Homo sapiens with a genetic disorder. So, whether this is a separate species or a member of our own species with some differences, we don't know yet. This is, and the Homo florensis are found in the Indonesian islands of Flores. Alright, let's take a look at human skin color. There's a wide degree of variation between very pale to very dark. And differences in skin color are due to amount of sunlight, natural selection. Because more pigment can block UV radiation and allow the synthesis of vitamin D, which is necessary. Folate is a precursor to vitamin D. So in the tropical latitudes where the radiation is high, the risk of vitamin D deficiency is low, but you have a higher rate of folate deficiency, which leads to vitamin D. At the higher latitudes, where low UV, you tend to have lighter skin with higher risk vitamin D deficiency and a lower risk of folate. Well, there's a whole lot we don't know about animal evolution and diversity, but it gets better as time goes on. And when biologists find a new species, taxonomists learn as much as it can about its physical and genetic and assign it to the appropriate group. And generally, they're automatically acquired from domain through genus, but it's a species name which is unique. And typically it's named after its discoverer, or from a habitat or other notable feature. Here's a leopard gecko found in Vietnam, recently discovered. The Pinocchio frog, see the nose. And a new monkey species found in the deep rainforests of the Congo. This is called newly described monkey species. We are done.